So let us start the webinar on. First of all, let me thank you for the overwhelming response that you've shown for registering for this webinar, actually. And we welcome you all to this webinar on growing commodity warehousing sector in India. So let me take you a step back, actually. So we all had an eventful, week. Last week, actually, there is a presentation that is made by the finance minister of the budget and the proposals that she had on various sectors, including the agriculture sector. And if you have listened to her speaking, she also made an announcement that she's going to make a huge investment or huge initiatives into developing the warehousing sector in the country, actually. So that's all coming on the cusp of the agriculture sector. So what is that like, the finance minister had left us with actually is that development of warehousing sector is critical for the farming sector to further develop, and so that the farmers can reap the benefits of whatever is the development that is happening in the Indian economy. So that having said, actually, so what is that I'm having as an advantage in the economy is that like, am I going to get a job? Obviously, guys, don't worry about that. If the warehousing sector is going to develop in a rapid manner, it doesn't have the necessary skill sets or the people with necessary skill sets who can efficiently manage these warehouses, actually. That's number one. And number two, there is an entire ecosystem that is associated with the warehouse that also develops with it. One is the standardization and certification. Two is the grading mechanism or the operators of grading systems and things like that. And the third one is about the financing of the the commodities, actually. So which is done by the collateral managers who help the banks to finance the commodities, actually. So that's also a critical link in the warehouse, and these are ecosystem players, and you have opportunities to work with them in various capacities. And we are going to look into it, actually, about what it is all about, actually. So what is that Indian agriculture has achieved when I said that we are at the cusp of development that is going to happen from here on, actually. So India is not only that you might have had in the last 1 month or so, India has pipped the United Kingdom, the Britain, to become the fifth largest economy in the world, actually. And that's not come, just because that we have a huge manufacturing sector or we have a huge services sector. It's also have come in because we have a huge agriculture sector which is able to feed into the people who are working in the manufacturing sector or working in the services sector. In addition to that, it is also providing an employment to a large number of people, in terms of people who are working in the farm and in terms of people who are working in the food processing sector. So these are two critical things which are happening. So where are we now in terms of various commodities? In terms of spices, we are the largest spice producer in the world, actually. So that basically means we produce something for us, and we also have the capability to export them to the outside world, actually. And we are the largest dairy producers in the world. That we produce about 24% of the total dairy production in the world. That basically means we are again self-sufficient in terms of dairy that we produce, and also we would be in a position to export them whenever there is a demand that is coming in from the global markets. And we are also producers of some niche commodities like coffee or tea, and we also export a lot of these commodities to the outside world. And these are like processed and exported as well, actually. And more importantly, we are the world's largest food basket. Having said that, we have so many grains that are being produced by the producers, so many pulses, so many other cash crops, which includes sugar, cotton, jute, our turmeric, our chilies. So these are commodities that are being produced by various farmers, and that pushed us into the position of India is largest food basket, actually. So having said that, where are we in terms of horticulture? So horticulture, again, we are the largest producers of fruits and vegetables, second largest producers of fruits and vegetables in the world. After having said that, again, we have an opportunity. If we can reap it appropriately, we have an opportunity to not only consume these commodities in the country, but also export these commodities to the outside world. And we also have niche products, including kaya, including tea, including coffee, which are also becoming one of the largest exported commodity in the economy, actually. So we always talk about India's production and India's exports. Actually, we also have to be pretty careful about, because India is such a huge country, and India has growing export needs. Are everybody in the world is looking at India when there is a shortage somewhere. Actually, that's what the same thing which happened when Ukraine-Russia war started. Everybody had started looking at India to support the African nations and the other nations who are there in the marginal framework in the European Union, group of countries. So they also looked at India to supply wheat to their nation so that they will be able to fulfill those shortages which have been left by Ukraine not being able to ship its wheat to the outside world, actually. So India not only has an export obligation, but also has a growing food processing industry, actually. So we'll come to it, what that has as an implication for the warehousing sector that we are going to study, actually. So as I said, India can not only export it, I mean, India also has to feed its own people, and that we have about 143 crores of people, so, day before the Prime Minister talked about, we have about 143 billion people, that are 143 crores of people. That basically means that, like, we need to feed them all, actually. And we can only export commodities only when we have an extra of grains that is left out after it is being used for feeding the people inside the country. And that is a population which has been growing in the last 1 decade at the rate of about 81 basis points, which is 0.81%, actually. So that basically means there were some numbers which were floating around some time back when China was severely affected by the COVID, that India is the largest populous country in the world. Be it whatever it is, but we have a huge population which India has to address in terms of feeding the population, which is looking at what is being produced in the country. And secondly, not only that our population is growing, even our economy is growing. And our economy is growing at the rate of around 4.5 to 5%, actually. So that basically means if you divide the total GDP or the income of the nation by the number of people who are residing in the country, then we get about 2 lakh rupees as the per capita income. With 2 lakh rupees, our consumption pattern is changing, actually. And that's the critical point. That's where the cusp of change is going to happen now, actually, which is the processed food sales in India is estimated about 35 lakh crores, which is growing at a rate of 11% compounded annual growth rate in the last 10 years or so. And if you have to, extrapolate it, it is estimated that, that it would turn into something like 130 or 140 crores in another 10 years, actually. So that's the kind of growth that we are going to see in terms of processed foods being sold in the country, actually. So we'll come back to it a little later. What does that mean to the entire ecosystem, actually? And the food is not being processed only for people who want to eat their banana chips, who want to make their rotis with the flour that is being milled out of the wheat, which is produced by the farmers, actually. It is also exported, so we are talking about sugar being exported. We are talking about the yarn being exported. We are talking about the processed food products, the juices, the meat, processed meat, and the processed fruits being exported, actually. So that is constituting about, about 1/10 of the total Indian agricultural exports, or total Indian agricultural exports. Having said that, it amounts for about 4 lakh crores, actually. In FY22, which is the last year alone, it has had a growth of 20% over the previous year, actually. So that basically means the food processing industry is not only growing to meet the internal demand, the food processing industry is also growing in order to meet the export demand that is coming up on the back of it, actually. And to support that, India has come up with a Make in India scheme and has started providing production-linked incentives to the food sector starting from FY22, which is the last budget, not this budget, the last budget. Between last budget and this budget, the government has announced an initiative to set up about 18 mega food parks, actually. So these are parks which would have facility to process, grade, store the processed food products, and also the raw material, which is the wheat grain or the rice grain, which is getting into production of rice flour or wheat flour in that particular food park, actually, or maybe edible oil using soybean, actually. So it is supposed to have not only the processing facilities, but also storage facilities, the grading and standardization facilities, and things like that. In addition to that, we are also talking about, fruits and vegetables. It is also it has also been proposed to develop around 139 cold chain, which is associated with about 18 mega food parks, which have been announced. And government has also mandated NABARD to allocate about 2,000 crores for lending to the people who are wanting to set up processing facilities in these mega food parks, actually. And mind it, nobody is going to set up any processing facility unless there is an ecosystem which is around them, which is about they need to be supplied with quality inputs or the quality raw materials. And at the same time, they also should be able to store whatever that they produce and sell it at a particular point in time at a later when they get the right price, when they get the orders and things like that. So they need storage. They need the standardization and certification ecosystem. They need the grading ecosystem, actually. So these are all going to happen as the food processing industry is going to grow. And we talked about exports growing, right? When the exports grow, I mean, the European Union, or for that matter, any developing country is not going to import your commodities. They don't meet their standards. And those standards are pretty much stringent. And we are developing our own standards, which is matching those export expectations of the international countries, actually. So it's not only export expectations, but also knowing about how to test and ensure that this is actually meeting those expectations, which is also pretty important. And to that extent, testing laboratories are also important, and that's being also focused. And at the same time, the standards have also come in at a later point in time now. And there is an increased demand for quality agricultural or horticultural products, actually, which is very important for the healthy development of the food processing sector. And it is also necessary that as a food processor, I would not be investing my entire money in procuring the commodity and storing it in my warehouse or storing it in another warehouse, which may be there in a food park, actually. But I would have to get a finance against it so that my money is not locked in what is my raw material, actually. So I will be using my raw material to get finance against the raw material at a better terms and conditions, lower than the finance that he may be acquiring it for his working purposes, so that he will be able to unlock the value which is there behind that commodity. And we need to have a system by which this unlocking can be enabled. And this is what is growing over a period in time. This is what also has been enabled to grow over a period in time, actually. It is growing because private investment and collateral management and warehousing is growing, and it is being enabled to grow because there are many people who are willing to finance against commodities. And so thereby, there is a growing connect with the finance, actually. And Government of India has taken a lot of warehousing and logistics initiatives, which is going to boost investment in the warehousing sector from time on, actually. Just to give you a quick look into the level of food processing in our country is 10%. Maybe it is too low. One may call it pathetic, but I would say that that's what shows that there is a 90% potential for the fruits or horticulture crops or grain to be further processed and value added and sold in the markets, actually. So in order for that to happen, we need to have that enabling ecosystem. We need to have that demand, but the demand has arrived. Demand hasn't gone back, actually. So the demand has arrived. in terms of growth of the Indian food processing sector, which is 14% of which accounts for 14% of the total manufacturing GDP and 13% of the food exports. Actually, the entire food exports, 13% is about the processed foods actually, and Indians are spending about a third, or every 100 rupee that they earn, 30% they are spending on groceries and food actually, and there is a sizable young population actually. So that is a big change that is happening in the economy. What that means actually. So today nobody goes to the market in order to buy wheat and then take the wheat to a chakki and then get that ground into a flour and come back and make roti in their house. Everybody goes to a retail shop, and then he buys whatever the wheat, branded, unbranded, ITC, any atta that they may get, and they come back and at home they make their chapatis actually. So nobody of the age of many who are attending this webinar would have even seen a chakki operating at a street corner, compared with the times that we lived in when we were youngsters at that particular point in time, where people used to buy wheat as a grain from the shops and then take it to the chakkis, grind it to the extent that they would need it for the next few months, and then use the ground floor to make chapatis and things like that. We don't even bother about where we get our wheat actually. We get the branded or unbranded wheat at the shops. We pick it up, we make our rotis and eat it. And that basically means there will be increasing demand for the processed food products. That's another thing that you need to make notice of actually. There are many people who are moving outside the world actually. When they move outside the world, they don't keep eating the what do you call it, as burgers and whatever that is being cooked up in the Middle East, are the in the America, are the other countries actually. So they still demand the Indian products actually. So there is a growth in expat Indian population who are living abroad. That basically means we need to export standardized processed food products to the outside world actually. So that is another demand factor that is coming up in a huge way actually. And in order for the food processing sector to develop, we need a large amount of labor to help us to do that actually. And there is a cheap workforce that contributes to the cost-effective processing food. And that makes our food processing a little more competitive than what it can be compared with the international brands, which may be out there in the market. And at the same time, the government has also liberalized the direct investment policy, foreign direct investment policy, to say that companies like Hirsch or chocolate processors, or any company who's from outside, they want to set it up. GM wants to set up a mill over here to sell their flour or their products over here. They can put up investment up to the extent of 100% in the market to process foods and sell it in their own brand name actually, or maybe export it to the outside world. And mega food parks does not develop on its own until it has a good, well-developed supply chain at the back of it actually. So that is again another factor which is going to spur the growth in food processing in the country actually. And there is an increased emphasis on skilling. So everywhere you go, you hear about skilling, and that's coming up basically because we need these skill sets which should match with the demand which is coming up due to the changes that are happening in the economy actually. So more processed food products, how to do that, and how best I can manage my food processing in a qualitative way, meeting my consumer expectations actually. That needs skill sets, which is essential for us to export or to put these products into the domestic markets actually. And there is a standard which has come in about 7-8 years ago from Food Safety and Standards Authority of India, which is matching the standards which are there in the global markets actually. So we need to have labs and certification agencies who should match that standards which have come up in order for them to test them and certify them whether they match those standards or not. And the focus has been on development of cold chain, because most of the food products or processed food products would have to be produced and stored in the cold chain, because these are processed, and so they need to be stored in the cold chain. And so there is an increased focus on development of cold chain. And when cold chain has to develop, actually, we also have to have increased availability of power in the market, actually. So that basically means that we need to have electricity. So today we don't need to bother about it, because we are excess in terms of supply of electricity into the market. We are able to export something over to the other countries which are connected by land with us. Actually, we supply to Nepal, we supply to Bangladesh. So electricity being not a constraint, we need to develop the cold chains in order for us to match the expectations, the development expectations of the economy over a period in time, actually. So that basically means we need to grow up from being 10% of the total production being value added. We need to grow up in terms of 60% or 70%, which you could see on the left side, a slide that you could see that in US is Brazil is having around 70% of their produce, which is processed, actually. And in order to get that done, the first and foremost thing is we need to have scientific storage capacities, actually. We store the commodities in such a way that it doesn't lead to loss of the quality of the commodity which is being stored, actually. So for as much longer period as possible, actually. So we need to have scientific storage capacities. That means warehouse owners who can store those commodities in a way that it does not lead to deterioration in the quality of the commodity for a longer period in time for which it can be stored. In addition to that, we also have to have standardization and grading ecosystem. Actually, we need to have, let's say, for example, if it is about spices, if we take cardamom, then cardamom is graded based on what is the size of the capsule. So that we need to have that standardization and grading ecosystem, and that development is going to happen over a period in time because of the mega food parks that is being set up by the government over a period in time. Also, that we have FSSAI standards which have come up. We have BIS standards on the back of some of the commodities. Actually, we need to have the certification, testing and certification infrastructure, actually. So that is again another opportunity that is coming up, which is not an opportunity to the outside entrepreneurs, which could be an opportunity for the entrepreneurs who are putting money into the warehousing sector itself to put up testing and certification infrastructure within their warehouse, actually. So when that is being put up, the opportunity is that you need to know what are those standards, how they are being tested, how the commodities are being sampled, so that you will be able to serve the ecosystem, which needs an entire suite of activities which have to be done and provided as an outcome to the people who are trying to access your warehousing service that you are going to provide. Actually, more importantly, the warehouse that you are trying to set up, or the scientific storage capacity that you are trying to set up, would have to be better connected to the supply chain. If you are not connected to the supply chain, you don't have a market for the services that you provide in the agricultural ecosystem, actually. So nobody would come to you if you don't have any connectivity to the supply chain. Why would they put the grain in a place which is not anywhere connected to the supply chain? It is neither connected to the trader, nor connected to the processor, nor connected to the producer, nor connected to the final consumer. So there is no use of. So you need to first understand how the supply chains are being organized, actually. Okay, so that having said that, what is the overall warehousing ecosystem looking like, actually? So just to give you a sample, we are producing about 315 million tons of wheat, rice, which includes all the food grains, the pulses, and things like that. Actually, 315 million tons. We are not going to consume the entire 315 million tons in a day. We are going to store it at a particular place or in a warehouse, and then we are going to consume over a period in time. And where is this getting stored? Maybe in the previous, decade back, or a previous decade, they may have gotten stored in the backyard of the farmer, or maybe 2 decades back, that would have gotten stored in the farmer's backyard. But that is no more the story. The story is that we have, warehousing capacities which are developing in the both the private sector and also the government sector, actually. So then you would ask me, what is that government sector doing in that, actually? So you have Central Warehousing Commission, you have the Food Corporation of India, you have the State Warehousing Commission, the corporation. So they all, procure the commodities at the minimum support price, store it in their warehouse, and put it in the open market. So, for example, yesterday you must have read, if you have seen in the newspapers. Yesterday, the government had said that we are going to release about 1 million tons, or 10 lakh tons of wheat in the open market. Actually, that's basically to say that the wheat is at a very high price, and we wanted to release wheat into the open market so that there is more supply, and given the demand, the wheat prices should come down, actually. And we are sitting at a time when the next crop of wheat is going to come, starting from a month from today, actually. So it's at a very critical stage. So the storage is being done by the government in the public storage facilities, which are being operated by Central Warehousing Corporation, the State Warehousing Corporation, and the Food Corporation of India. In addition to that, we also have organized and unorganized private warehousing capacities to the extent of about 197 million tons, actually. Putting together both, we still have a total gap of around 108 million metric tons, which have to be built up over a period in time, actually. And that storage is coming up, as you might see on the right side of the slide, where there is a traditional storage on the top, where the bags are being stacked one after another. And on the bottom, the bags are being stored in the big storage bins, actually. So there are modern methods of storing is also coming up and is being brought by the government, actually. But the unfortunate point about the warehousing sector, on the private side, the 90% of the total capacity is under the unorganized sector, actually. That is, they are being operated by individual players, and they are serving to those areas which they would want to serve over a period in time. They don't bother about where the supply chain is located. They don't bother about what commodity or what quality of the commodity that is being stored. How do I connect that commodity to the world of finance? But those are all going to change. And also, this capacity is growing, is expected to grow at the rate of around 15% over the next 5 years. So that is the kind of job potential that you are looking at if you are rightly equipped, actually. And this is what we are trying to do through the certificate program in commodity warehousing, actually. So we come up with an entire ecosystem that is coming up over a period in time, but there is still a problem. We are going to move in from organized to unorganized to organized warehousing ecosystem. That basically means we need to know what are the evolving management processes and what are the operational skill requirements. How do I arrange for the inwarding of the commodity? How do I arrange for the outwarding of the commodity? How do I sample a particular commodity to do testing? Where do I send my sample to a certification agency? And how would I connect with the financier if my client wants the commodity to be financed? Nobody knows about it. So we need people who have the operational skill requirements, actually. And oftentimes, like say, for example, a warehouse in Punjab at this point in time would need, would not need, labor to operate the warehouse, because, there is no storage over there in those warehouses, actually. Starting from April, the commodity is going to come into the warehouses in Punjab. And so from April till, say, around October, November, or December, the commodity is getting stored. And slowly, let's say, for example, you have employed 100 at the peak arrival time of wheat into the warehouse. Slowly, as wheat moves out of the warehouse, actually, you will have to remove the labor, actually, in terms of optimizing your labor costs. How would I do that, actually? So that's, again, a big challenge in the entire warehousing ecosystem. And as I told you earlier, most of these warehousing ecosystem the warehouses are not connected to the supply chain. If you are not connected to the supply chain, forget about the business developing over a period in time. You will face huge challenges in terms of people coming up to you to provide services around the warehousing sector. And there is an institutionalization of standards and storage regulations that have come in place. Actually, we are going to look into it. Who is that who is setting up those storage standards? Who is that who is setting up those requirements, which establish that you need to ensure not only the physical existence of the commodity, but also the quality of the commodity as it is being submitted as per the norms which have been set by them, actually. So there is an increasing institutionalization of standards and storage regulations, actually. And people are not aware of modern technological developments, actually. So labor is, on the one hand, a problem. On the other hand, how do I replace the labor, use the mechanical things in order to do the inwarding and outwarding of the commodity? And how do I manage the warehouse without being manned by a security? And how do I know what is the temperature which is there inside the warehouse? These all can be done by the modern technological development. So we are going to look into it in terms of IoT devices. Security systems today can, tell you that who is gaining an unauthorized entry into the warehouse, who is supposed not to gain, actually. And so it can even indicate to you theft through an application which is provided by your collateral management service provider or the warehouse service provider, to tell you that, hey, there is an unauthorized intrusion that has happened into your warehouse, so do take care, actually. And that video is recorded, and that video is available for you and the law enforcement agencies to track who has done that, actually. So artificial intelligence has come into in terms of quality testing. And standard operating procedures. Nobody knows what are the standard operating procedures in the entire ecosystem, actually. And there is no initiative. Forget about standard operating procedures, which you will get to know from the other player. But at the rapid pace at which the warehousing industry is developing, there is no initiative, either from the public side or from the private side, in terms of developing the skill sets around warehousing, how to do warehousing in a cost efficient, time efficient, and in a successful economical way, actually. So there is no structured initiative to do that. So that is how we have come into putting up this certificate program in warehousing management, or commodities warehousing management, actually. So the quick thing that may come into your mind, are you going to talk about only agriculture commodities? No, we are going to, this course is going to cover both the agriculture commodities. It is also going to cover the horticultural commodities which are stored in the cold storages. This is also going to cover the metals which are being stored. But the emphasis is more on the large or the broader agriculture commodities, and less on metals and less on the processed or the cold storages which is there. But yet it would brush you up in terms of what the cold storage and what are the essential requirements, what is the status of the industry, is something as a knowledge that you are going to get it. And what are the do's and don'ts in a cold storage is also something. So if you're looking at in terms of acquiring knowledge to work in a cold storage, this is the best place to start with in terms of acquiring that, actually. So this course is being conducted by people who are experts in the industry, actually, and you will hear from them, as to what their experience has been in managing the warehouses over a period in time. All of them have put in an experience between 5 to 10 years at a minimum, and up to 20 years at a maximum, actually. So that's the people who want to, from whom you would want to know what are the best practices in warehousing management, and how do you tackle various life challenges over a period in time, actually. So there is an experience-based input which is being provided by these industry experts. Actually, it's not only me, there are various other people from private organized warehousing sector who have developed their skill sets in different aspects, which is the auditing of the warehouse, collateral management, financing of the commodity. So they all have come together to put up this video-based lecture in terms of making you a much well-versed employee of the warehousing sector, actually. You'll also learn about technologies which are today available in the warehousing sector. You'll also learn about one important agency which has come up pretty new, which is WDRA, which is the Warehousing Development and Regulatory Authority. And they provide accreditation to the warehouses if they follow scientific warehousing practices, actually. And not only that, they provide accreditation. Accreditation will also follow with a strict compliance regime. And so what are those compliant regimes, actually? What is that accreditation process involved? what is the benefit that I get being accredited to WDRA? So having said that, WDRA as an agency has been there in existence since 2009, and the accreditation has so far been voluntary, but it is only time when it will be made mandatory actually, and it only empowers you to store commodities which meet certain quality standards actually, and all commodities which are coming into WDRA accredited warehouses would have to be quality tested, certified, and stored in that warehouse actually. And as soon as the commodity is stored, the commodity repository creates an electronic negotiable warehouse receipt. So this is also something today you talk about an electronic share, which you can own by trading in the markets. Tomorrow, by trading in commodity markets, you can even own an electronic receipt of 10 tons of wheat which is stored in a warehouse which is nearby to your place. Or if you are a processor, you can get 10 tons of wheat in terms of a receipt into your this one, and you can take that receipt, you can take a printout of that receipt, and then do the due diligence in terms of the warehouses actually, and then go to the warehouse, show your identity, and take the commodity out actually. So it's as easy as that actually. So by using the digital certificate, you can go to the banking system or the financial institutions and get the commodity financed actually. So because it is a WDRA accredited warehouse, you can also get a loan against those commodities which are stored in the accredited warehouses actually. You can learn the intricacies of HR management. You can enhance your risk management skill sets actually. How do you ensure that the commodity which is coming in at that particular quality of that particular quantity is the same thing which is getting released over a period in time. You won't get the same quality, but it will be within the range which is permitted to be given after some period of storage. That's what is more important. How do you ensure that? And that is because you have acquired learning this course, by understanding what are the risks in storage of the commodities actually, and how would you manage that? How do you do the basic commodity handling? That's again another thing that you would know about. You'd also know about the intricacies of financing, operations, risk management, and by completing this course, you become job ready from day one of completing the course. What this course is all about? This course has about 55 lectures and 55 hours of videos, which is typically 1 hour per lecture. And these videos are developed by industry experts who are speaking to you on various topics which have been decided on, about 5 papers which we are going to look into it. And these videos are available 24/7. You don't need to attend it at a particular point in time. These videos are available 24/7. And you are working, you are a student, you don't need to bother about it. You go attend your college. In the evening, you can come back and attend this lecture, attend these lectures actually, which is available online. And you have each lecture which are divided into 3 parts, because nobody has any patience to go through an 1 hour lecture actually in a video mode actually. So that's why we've decided to divide that into 3 parts, so which is maybe roughly about 15 to 20 minutes. And after every 15 to 20 minutes, there will be a progress testing that happens to ensure that you have just switched on the video and not sleeping in front of it. You also have to look at it carefully, and you also have to attempt the multiple choice questions which will be given to you to the extent of 3 questions, and you need to correctly attempt 2 questions out of the 3 so that you can move on to the next part of the same lecture. So thereby you can move on 55 into 3, which is 165 parts, one after another, by attending questions in the after each part of the video which has been posted over there. And once you've registered, the access for you would be given to about 6 months actually. And after you complete all the videos, by answering all the questions after the end of each of the videos and things like that, then you'll get a certificate of successful participation. And yet you are not satisfied. You just get a certificate of participation. You're not getting a certificate of commodity warehousing management. Yes, you can get that certificate of commodity warehousing management if you can attempt pay about 1,000 rupees for the examination that would be conducted, on an online mode, online proctored mode, actually, to ensure that you only focus on the screen and you attempt to answer those questions under certain conditions, actually. And then you can give the examination from the comfort of your home, and then you can get the certificate, and the certificate would have a validity of 3 years. So all of this process would have to be completed within 6 months. If you don't, then you need to extend it by paying a little bit more, because for the next 3 months, the institute will be giving you access to those videos which you have. Also, in addition to the videos, we have reading material which are also given to you on a login basis, actually. So you will have access to those reading material as well, actually, in the papers that we are going to talk about it, actually. The fees is about 8,000 rupees for individuals and 6,000 rupees for corporates who are booking around 10 candidates. Or if you are people who are in a school or in a college who would want to come and register en masse, actually, then we can offer you that corporate rate. If you can come with number of people to be registered over there, we would register them on the system, and you can pay using the payment link which we can give it to you. Or otherwise, if you are an individual, you can do it as well on the system. So there is currently a early bird mechanism that is being operated, which is valid up to this March end, actually. So thereby, if you are an individual, you don't need to pay 8,000. There is a 25% discount, actually, and you have to pay only 6,000 rupees. And again, if you are a group of 10 people or a corporate registering about 10 people, they can pay, at the rate of 4,500 rupees per participant, actually. So that's the fee structure. And there are 5 papers that I said. The 55 lectures that we've talked about is divided into 5 papers. Paper number 1, warehousing industry ecosystem and evolution. It's going to introduce you to the basics of warehousing. What is the current status of Indian warehousing industry? And what are the modern developments that have happened, actually, which is the silo-based storages, actually. How do you store, edible oils is something which has come up pretty recently. And retailing and warehousing, how both of them are connected, because there is a developing retailing industry which is getting connected to the warehousing sector, actually. So that is also an important policy measures that impact the warehousing sector and its operations, which is pretty critical, actually, because from time to time, there are standards which are being released. From time to time, there are mandatory compliances that are there on the warehousing sector, how to meet those, actually. So that is, again, another thing which you need to know that, and that is what it is being told to you from this lecture. What is the role the warehousing sector plays, and what are the fundamentals in terms of storages by types from the history till now, and what are the ownership structures of the warehouses, actually, which are there, factors affecting the warehousing of commodities, and major warehousing agencies in India. There are private and public sector, companies which are there operating in warehousing. And all these warehousing happens because there are markets in which commodities are being traded, actually, and the commodities are being traded, stored, and traded, basically, because they have a standard, and that is being accomplished by way of assaying those commodities, actually. So you will also be, introduced to what are the commodities, common commodities, and what are the common varieties or major varieties, actually. So, come wheat, you will have introduction about all the wheat varieties which are there. What are the major marketing centers where the wheat is being traded? What are the major producing states, actually? What is like a global production, supply, and distribution scenario from where you will get this data? What is the quality and the grades which are applicable to wheat? So, for example, to wheat, so it covers around 20 to 25 commodities and commodity groups, actually. So you would have an introduction to the entire set of commodities, actually. And you will also get to know about what are the spot trading, what is about spot trading, and what is about futures trading. This is get to know about what spot trading and futures trading. You won't get a in-depth knowledge about what the futures markets are, but you'll get to know what are its basic functions and how would serve the basic need of transacting between this seller and the buyer, or the producer and the trader and the trader, and trader to the retailer, and retailer to the consumer, actually. How would that happen? And what is an agriculture produce marketing committee, and what is electronic national agriculture markets, is all being told to you in this particular paper, actually. And and what role the warehouses play in trading of commodities, because warehousing is something which creates time value and a place value. And so how would you value that in terms of valuing the charges that you would be putting up actually? So these are something which you would be introducing down the line during the course, actually. Warehousing and cold storages and metal warehousing, it'll introduce you to how the metals are being warehoused in the country. Currently, if you are asking me about are the metals being warehoused in the private sector warehouses, yes, there are some few private sector warehouses which are offering metal warehousing facilities, but of late, this is more or less becoming company-based metal warehousing, actually. So the companies have owned their own metal warehouses and stored their commodities, but uh, maybe in future that is going to become, an increasing capacity that's going to come up over a period in time. And it is also going to tell you about what is National Accreditation Bureau, and what is Bureau of Indian Standards, and what is Food Safety and Standards Authority of India. What are their roles? What are the complaints you as a warehousing operator that you need to get done? And what are the what is meant by a farmer producer organization, which is coming up pretty recently? What are their roles and responsibilities, the management and governance of the farmer producer organizations? Coming to the warehouses, it will tell you about the basics of warehouse operations, how to design a warehouse, depending on which commodity that you are planning to offer services to, and how to do pest management, how to do fumigation of the commodities, how to make your warehouse compliant to the Warehousing Development and Regulatory Authority guidelines. And that is being taken by the official in the authority himself, actually. So you'll get to know from them as to what they are and what are commodity repositories, which issue you the electronic negotiable warehouse receipts, actually. And you'll also get to know about cold and other storages and storage of non-agriculture commodities, the quality standards, grading and standardization, SOP of operations and warehousing. What are the documentations that you need to keep to be compliant with, the statutory requirements in order to meet either the financing or operation of a warehousing facility in a particular locality, actually? And what are the risks in commodity storage, and what role insurance plays in managing those risks, actually? What are the do's and don'ts when you are trying to claim an insurance is also being told to you in the course of this course. How do you do structured trade financing? I mean, that's a growing industry that's coming up on the back of the commodities. And that has a process. There is a standard operating procedure in getting that done. And there are several risks in managing financing the commodities, actually. How would you manage that? That is something which is being told to you in person by the people who are managing those risks on behalf of the financial institutions, actually. And what is the supply chain, and what are its objectives, actually, and what are the types of supply chain? How would it matter to me in order for me to operate a warehouse, actually, is also something which will be told to you during the course of the paper. And the warehousing audit is something you will get to know at what frequency the audit has to be done. Audit has to be done on which are the factors which have to be audited over a period in time. Or how would you schedule an audit, and on what periodicity you would be scheduling an audit? It will all be told to you in terms of best practices that are being followed in the private warehousing industry, which have their own established practices in the industry, which have been trusted by the financial players, actually. How would I finance a warehousing enterprise? I want to set up a warehouse, actually. How would I finance that warehousing enterprise? That is also being told to you during the course of this particular paper. And on the fourth, you have the legal and institutional significance in warehousing. How do you manage your labor force, as I told you, that it needs a huge labor force. At the same time, you don't need them for a long period in time. So what do you want to do? Outsourcing of the labor force, actually. And if you are outsourcing, how would you manage the conflicts that may arise between the different groups of employees and the employee in the management of the warehouses? And what are the statutory compliances? Because it is a place where many human beings are coming in, there might be dangerous with respect to safety and health aspects. How do you do that? And if you are in an industry, how do you do succession planning? And if you have employees which are permanent in nature, how do you do performance monitoring? How would you do the performance appraisal? And how would you provide motivation to them based on their performance appraisal is also something which you would learn from HR experts who are working in the private warehousing industry, actually. And what are the health and safety aspects of employees in the warehouse, which is also told you what role a safety committee plays in a warehouse, warehousing company, actually, and what are the compliances and enforcement course that they need to oversee over a period in time? What are the safety equipment and tools that needs to be managed in the warehouse is also something. Interpersonal soft skills, actually, how do you talk to the labor? How do you ensure that your employees talk to the labor, and then how to improve that interpersonal skills is also something which is talked to you in the fourth paper. On the fifth and the final paper, you would have entirely be focusing on modern technological interventions and the future of the warehousing industry, actually. So where the warehousing industry is going to happen. And there are various challenges in the way the warehouses are today being organized, actually, but how would you adjust a particular technology to the warehouse that is looking at in terms of modernizing itself, actually? So technological challenges, warehousing management system. So you talked about various records needs to be kept and various monitoring and surveillance that need to be done on. And all of this would have to be recorded and maintained. And that is being recorded and maintained, or you can do it through using WMS, which is warehousing management systems. And there are well-developed management systems that have come in place over a period in time. How do they operate? What are the essential components of the WMS is something which is told to you, actually. So you get an access to how the technology is being implemented in the warehousing industry. And IoT devices, sitting over here, you can monitor at what temperature, at what humidity that your commodity is being stored in the warehouse, actually. So that is being enabled by Internet of Things, IoT devices that you might have heard, when the next level of revolution that is going to be brought up, actually. So you don't need to worry about the quality of the commodity. An app in your mobile phone can tell you whether the temperature and the humidity in the warehouse is at the right, level, so that your commodity is in a safe, in the safe hands, actually. And how do you register the transaction of those commodities in a blockchain and application and commodity inventory management is something also told you how to use blockchain in commodity inventory management, application of artificial intelligence and computer vision and quality analysis. So compared with the past, where you need to take a sample following a particular procedure, and you need to take the sample to the laboratory, and the laboratory will take another 1 day or 2 days to test the commodity, the sample, and tell you physically what are its properties, and to tell you chemically what are its properties, actually. And today, by just spreading the sample on a scanner, and the scanner scans that particular sample and tells you if it is, let's say, for example, if it is soybean, then it tells you what is this, size of the grain, how many grains are damaged, and what is the percentage of grain damage which is there witnessed, actually, and what is the percentage of filling, and what is the level of protein which may be there estimated, and what is the level of oil which will be there in the soybean oil. So you get to know the value of the commodity instantly by putting in these. And these scanners are not going to be pretty costly, but you should know which scanner to use and what are the do's and don'ts in sampling and analyzing those commodities using a quality analysis with the help of artificial intelligence and computer vision. So it just scans the grain and tells you all the factors which you may get after 2 days if you're going to a physical lab to get it tested, actually. So that's an instant valuation of your commodity, So that happens using technology. What are the future potentials for technology development? Let's say, for example, you have, you know, intrusion systems, which is monitoring whether there is an artificial, there is a person who's unauthorizedly entering into a warehouse, and that is actually trapped, and video is made available to the law enforcement authorities, and video is also available for you to submit to a insurance agency if there is a theft and that led to loss of commodities in the warehouse, and you are insured against the theft, and that is that is something which has been enabled by the technology development that had happened over a period in time. Let's say, for example, if your grain is being stored in a particular warehouse, actually, but that is, getting infected more with moths or some insects which have which have a greater movement, actually. So there could be something, cameras which can track, maybe even in the dark environment in a warehouse, actually, to tell you that whether there is a significant insect movement, that basically means there is a significant infection of the storage space in the warehouse. And how do I develop that technology into that, actually? So these are like some future potential areas for technology developments in warehousing, actually. Okay, so having studied that, what is my opportunity? What is the job that I would get? You can be on a simple and straightforward manner. You can actually manage a cluster of warehouses for a private company, and we are connected to the All India Association for Agricultural Warehousing Service Providers, actually. So we can provide your the past candidates number for the certification testing mechanism over to them, and they have a huge demand that is coming up on the back of the growth that they are witnessing in the commodity sector. So they can readily talk to you and maybe refer you to the companies which are requiring more warehouse managers to manage those warehouses which they are acquiring over a period in time. You can become a consultant after getting in some experience about how to manage warehouses in the overall. Actually, you can become a consultant in the warehousing industry and develop successful warehousing businesses for entrepreneurs who have put on money in the warehousing industry. You can also become a collateral financing expert, and you can also get to know about how to do financing of the warehousing industry. How would you do how would you do financing of a warehousing startup? Actually, how would you value that startup? Is something which you can learn with the people who have actually taken you up about the entire financing of the warehousing industry or the economics of the warehousing industry, actually. Managing the bank exposure, when the bank has lent against those commodities, how would you manage those bank exposure to commodities? Consultancy role for the warehousing industry as a whole. And you can be a technical advisor, how to do pest management, how to deploy technology in a particular warehouse, what sort of opportunities that are available in a warehouse, actually. And finally, because you know what in warehouses, you know how technology sector is going up, actually, and you can also become a manager or an entrepreneur who will be developing technologies which are related to cost efficient warehousing, actually. And you can become finally an entrepreneur. You can also put in your own money and become an entrepreneur setting up warehousing industry on your own, actually. So there is no limit. Sky is the only limit once you get that knowledge or the skill set which are closer to how you can manage a commodity warehouse. And I wish you all the best. And thank you everyone for having attended this webinar. And do come back uh, to our website, register yourselves for the course, and attend this course and give us the feedback. What is that you learned over a period in time? Actually, I look forward to having you. And this is the campus, the NISM campus, which is there at the back. And unfortunately, you would not be able to coming to the campus, but you're welcome to the campus at any point in time, located around 60 to 70 kilometers outside of Mumbai. So you can come over there and we welcome you, take you, show you all the facilities and things like that.